Let's talk about the upcoming NFL 2K video game that we've been waiting quite a few years for. Now, this game was announced about 4 years ago around this time, early 2020, and we are still waiting for this game to be available for us to play. It's had some pushbacks. They've even started over a few times. But what exactly is this game going to look like? What is it going to play like? What do we know about it so far? Now, I've done videos on this game quite a few times over the last few years, but people are still asking me every day, what's the latest with this game? What's going on? So I'll tell you everything that I know, everything that I've heard, and kind of what you can expect hopefully soon later this year from the upcoming NFL 2K game. And if you never want to miss out on any of the updates surrounding this game or the upcoming football games like Madden 25 or the EA Sports College football game, make sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon on. That way you never miss any of these important videos. We're trying to hit 600K subscribers before the end of this year, and if everybody watching just subscribed, we could hit that number in a few days. So what is going on with the new NFL 2K game? What is the latest? What's the holdup? Well, we know 4 years ago that they officially announced that they were back in business with the NFL. We saw it reported on IGN, ESPN, and many sites like that. The NFL is excited to be back working with 2K again. However, they were not back in business to make simulation NFL games, which was a bit of a bummer, but we're still hungry from any type of NFL game from 2K, and we know based on some of their other products that they're going to deliver something that's at least fun and pretty deep. Now, the reason they cannot make a simulation game like the old NFL 2K5 games is because EA does still have that exclusive simulation license with the NFL. However, that does not mean that other NFL games can't be made in terms of an arcade style game, which is what 2K was in business with the NFL to make. And if you remember back in the PS2 days, we had some absolutely great arcade games like NFL Street, NFL Blitz, and even recently we got Wild Card Football, which many believe was supposed to be the 2K game, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the video, but that game itself is also really fun to play as well. Just because it's not simulation doesn't mean it can't be fun and can't offer a good experience, and for that reason, a lot of people were still very excited about this 2K game. Well, initially it was supposed to drop in 2021, then it got pushed back to 2022, and then we didn't hear anything about it at all in 2023. Now we're here in 2024 wondering what's going on. Well, it would appear that hopefully by the end of this year when football season starts, we could finally see this game come to fruition. But the reason that we haven't heard about it in some time is because it had been reported not too long ago that 2K actually restarted the process of this game multiple times. So at least twice. They had a game that they were developing, and then at some point they said, we don't like this, let's scrap it and start over. Did that same thing again, and they since scrapped the second one at least, maybe even more than 2 times for all we know, and now they're working on whatever the latest version of this game is going to be. But many people think that the Wild Card Football game that dropped a few months back was actually supposed to be the NFL 2K arcade game because it was created alongside Saber Interactive, who has partnered with 2K in the past for games like NBA Playgrounds, and Wild Card Football was essentially the Playgrounds version in some way to the NBA game. And it really makes sense because everything we were hearing about the 2K game for the most part kind of lined up with what Wild Card Football was. So what it kind of appears may have happened, we don't know this for sure, but what a lot of people think happened is that was the game that was supposed to be released. At some point, they didn't like the idea anymore, so they scrapped it and either sold it to Saber or allowed them to continue making it and publish it under their own name, because that game does have real NFL players in it. It has the NFLPA license. However, it doesn't have the actual NFL license, which is why there are no real teams or real stadiums and logos, but they have the real players in it. Whereas 2K's game would have the real players, but also actual teams. But we also heard for a while that 2K wanted to make the game as simulation as possible without completely crossing that line, because you can't just outright make another simulation game because EA has that exclusive deal with the NFL, and whether or not you think that Madden is a good simulation game or not, it still is technically a simulation football game. So 2K kind of has their hands tied to some degree. They can try to make it as simulation as possible without completely crossing that line, but at the end of the day, the NFL still has to sign off on it, and if it goes too far to the simulation direction, they could say, you know, this is a little bit too realistic, you've got to dial it back some because we have this other partnership over here, and they can't breach that contract. But seeing what Wild Card Football eventually wound up being, I could see 2K potentially looking at that and saying that it was a little too arcadey. It wasn't close enough in that middle ground where they were trying to be, and that's probably why they scrapped it, if that is in fact true. Now we're going to talk about what this game could potentially look like if it does indeed drop at the end of this year, which it should. But really quickly, I want to shout out today's video sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. If you like sports and you like pick'em games, then you've got to be on Underdog Fantasy. They have a wide variety of player stats, and all you simply have to do is pick higher or lower, and if they hit, you win big money. And the best part about Underdog Fantasy is they always have great sign-up specials. For example, tonight, if you sign up, they'll give you Steph Curry to get a single point, meaning all he has to do is get 1 point and that's it. He wins. And they have daily sign-up specials like this for new users all the time. On Friday, they'll have Victor Wembanyama to get 1 point. And if you want to play for the playoffs this weekend in the NFL, they're going to give you Christian McCaffrey on Sunday to get a single yard. So they help you win some money right out the gate. But the other great thing is if you sign up using my promo code RAY, R-A-Y, they'll also double your first deposit up to $100. So you can get $100 free to play with and a free pick at sign up to help you win some money, and you just can't beat that. Now, what exactly is this 2K game going to look like when it drops? People have been talking about this for years in the industry. They've kind of gone back and forth about it, but lately what a lot of people seem to think, as far as they know about the game from whatever rumors and sources they have, is that it's definitely going to be a little more arcade than the community probably expects it to be, because for a while we thought they would make it as simulation as possible, and they're probably still going to be doing that, but there is a very fine line and gray area there when you're dealing with a company that does in fact have an exclusive sim deal with a different company. So they're going to try to push it as far as they can, but it's probably still going to be a little bit more arcade than the football gaming community really wants it to be. But I'm assuming it's not going to be quite as arcade as Wildcard Football was, because if that is indeed a game that they were working on and they scrapped it and then just gave it to Saber, then that lets me know that it's going to be a little more simulation based than that. I still think, from everybody I've talked to and just other rumors inside the industry, that we should be getting something more along the lines of an NFL Street game. Now, it's probably not going to be called NFL Street, but it's going to be in that same vein, because if you really look at what 2K specializes in, they specialize in that type of park, street environment. You see it in their NBA 2K game. Even though it's a simulation game, they have that whole other aspect of the game that's the park, that's on the street, and it has a ton of customization, it has a ton of different ways to play, it has that interactive community, which 2K said when they announced this deal with the NFL years back, that two things that you can expect from this game is for it to be deep and have that immersion that you've come to expect from 2K games, but also that it's going to be a very social game. It's going to be a social experience, which goes hand in hand with what the park is in NBA 2K. It's very social. You can play with multiple friends, you talk while you're playing. Like, that's kind of the whole idea, is you're on an actual team and you're talking strategy while you're playing. But also there's the open world environment of 2K where, you know, you buy different clothes and shoes, you go around the city, you kind of hang out, and you can do some things in the open world. So it would make sense that this is where they're going to go with the NFL game, because if it has to be arcade, the best thing you can do is a street game. People have been begging for NFL Street to return or something like it. Wildcard Football is pretty cool, and it's a taste of that, but it's a little too arcadey in a way, whereas like NFL Street was still an arcade game, but it had a little more realism to it than, say, a Wildcard Football. So if you take an NFL Street environment, you take an open world environment like NBA 2K, you add all the customization options, you add, you know, a season mode in there where you can get some depth, you can get some immersion, and you add the social aspect of playing 7-on-7 or even having 3-on-3 games mixed in there as well with buddies, where you can get on a headset, kind of talk and play, talk strategy. That really seems like the route they're going from everything I've heard. We really don't know, because they've been very quiet publicly about it, but we do know that they're still working on it. They've restarted the process multiple times because it wasn't what they wanted, and just kind of piecing everything together, to me, it sounds like that's the path we're headed down. It's going to be an arcade NFL Street, it's going to be social, it's going to have some elements of NBA 2K's My Park with open world and things like that and customization, but you're not going to see NFL 2K5 talking like franchise mode and things like that, because that's just more simulation based game stuff. But I think for an arcade game, you're going to get maybe one of the better arcade football games we've ever seen, and because they've worked on it for so long, there's really no reason for them to drop a dud at this point. If they're going to make sure it's right before it comes out, that means we're going to probably get a pretty epic game one way or the other. Now, I did mention earlier in the video that we're also getting a college football game very soon as well, and if you want to know the latest on that game, you can check out this important video right here on the screen.